And if you can understand yourself and what drives you and motivates you, then you'll be incredibly successful whatever you do. If you don't understand what drives you, you can actually be pretty miserable. I think that's up to leadership to help make people self-aware.
What's up, everyone? I have a great guest for you today. If you don't know the company, you probably should. We have Marcus Jewell, the Chief Sales Officer and Executive Vice President at Juniper Networks. Andrei, what was the most interesting thing to you about today's conversation?
Yeah, I mean, Marcus is a great guest because I think that he fits the profile of, the cool sales guy that you would like to hire, ideally, like drives fast cars, et cetera, et cetera. But he has a really, honest perspective on the sales profession, where it's headed, what people should be focused on, and how AI is going to impact it. And so I thought hearing his perspective on that was very interesting.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for people that have been doing this a long time, yet they realize and recognize that the profession's changing, and in order to thrive, you need to evolve. And I think Marcus does a fantastic job talking about the profile that's going to be successful in the age of modern selling, how we should all be thinking about AI. I know a bunch of people, get scared of it replacing people's jobs, and it's going to probably replace a lot of things that you don't actually want to do. Along those lines, like especially with what we have going on now in the world, how we can think about keeping people motivated. Because at the end of the day, like if you're not motivated and excited about what you're doing, it's going to be pretty damn hard to be successful. So I really hope everybody enjoys this episode. Marcus is an entertaining and fun guy. And if you like what you hear today, go check out another one. Marcus, what's going on, man?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Well, there's a lot going on. I'm stuck in a chilly UK at the moment, so I can bear with it. I think we got down to minus 22 degrees centigrade last night, which is pretty cold. So we've had snow on and off for 2 weeks, and just living the dream, stuck at my desk like everyone else every day, trying to run a $5 billion business and get stuff sold. So it's been a journey.
Well, it has been a journey, and it seems like based on, what I read about your company, you guys are doing a pretty good job there. And I think, this kind of leads us right into one of the topics that I wanted to talk to you about, because, you're right. Here we are, we're stuck in our houses in a lot of places. We don't have that just kind of general connection and excitement of being around our peers, being around our customers, being around our prospects. And one of the topics that I have been just hearing a lot of questions about from other leaders in the go-to-market function is, how do you keep people motivated? And specifically in sales, because, honestly, it's not an easy time. It's not an easy time for a lot of companies to be a seller. People are a little bit tighter on the budget. There's a lot more process. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they're like, it feels like the smaller companies, the buying process now is like an enterprise process, just because how tight and how many people are involved around just any purchase decision. Mm-hmm. And it's tough. And so, I know this is something that you've been thinking a lot about, and just how do we kind of maintain and sustain motivation in sales during these times?
It's a great question. I think there's a couple of vectors we can talk about. The first one is that we were on this journey before COVID. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall in what I call classic relationship sales, where there's a couple of dynamics that were happening pre-COVID, which was that the buying community was getting a lot younger, clearly, as we move forward. So Gen X now getting into buying decisions and maybe less interested in the pure relationship. And that's not to say relationships are not important. Of course, if you're in sales or the front end of a business, you need to have some EQ and some relationship skills, of course. But they're not the only thing you need. What the democratization of cloud has done has shown that IT and IT solutions are bought based on outcomes and experience. So for us, it was, how do we give that world-class experience and improve that experience through a virtual world? And then COVID hit, and then, okay, right, everyone's an internal seller now. So how's this going to pan out? And like everyone else, in the first few months, we did everything that you think you need to do, which is what I call false fun. And, Zoom drinks parties are not fun. Zoom quizzes.
Amen.
Zoom
I think
quizzes.
we're all over the Zoom happy hours.
We're over it, Look, and Zoom's a great company and a great partner of ours, and I think their technology will be around for a long time. But there is this Zoom fatigue or Teams fatigue or whatever platform you're using about, do I really want to be on calls for 10 hours a day and then join a virtual drinks party or a virtual quiz and those kind of things? And so we quickly realized that was kind of, trying to inject fun into the system wasn't good. We did a lot of reach out to our individual people by keeping them online. So we increased the cadence of communication, but made that communication very light and very multimedia. So we all became a video expert. So, now the one skill I've learned through this is I can make a video now quickly, get it out, get it disseminated, pushed out, and talk about things. But we also talked about the personal aspects a lot. We talked about that this is hard for everyone, and just showed that everyone can kind of struggle with it, and made sure we did things to support. We we gave a lot of free days away. So the one thing we realized is people were getting fatigued, weren't taking vacation. So we still do to now, like every quarter or two, we'll put in another 2 vacation days for everyone in the company, just so they can chill out, relax, whether they're going to Netflix binge or do whatever was incredibly important to do that. And it was just this kind of shared environment that it's tough for everyone, that there's no single answer for this, but it's tough for everyone. But what we did do on the other side is that we really engaged very heavily with giving them tools to make their job easier. So we doubled down on our AI tools. We doubled down on what we now call micro motivation and how we actually make everything a little bit of a game. So it's not like gamification tools, but it's about scoring points for every aspect of the sales job and then having a leaderboard and prizes attached to that. And that's worked particularly well for us on that basis.
One of the things you said about the engaging with different mediums internally, video, like give me an example. So when would you record a video and send it to your team? Like what would be an example, just cadence or circumstance that you would do something like that?
Sure. Yeah, we got it in the early days. We probably went overkill. We were doing maybe one for the senior levels, for the C levels, probably one every 2 weeks, which is quite a lot. 10,000 people in the business, like 3,500 in my org. It was kind of a little bit overkill. So team leaders were doing them weekly. So their actual first line manager, and they still have their cadence. And then we've dropped back now to basically once a month giving some kind of video. Apart from that, we also do voiceovers. We use MindTickle, bit of a plug for MindTickle, great platform. So we do a lot of voiceovering of slides, which actually works really well. And we do a lot of animation. We're using animation a lot, actually, as opposed to just videos of us, because you don't need to see my face to be motivated. You need to see the message. So we kind of are using that a bit. And then we use platforms. We use LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn more to communicate with my team than anybody else. So LinkedIn for me isn't trying to reach customers necessarily as much, because I can't really scale to a single customer interaction. If you think about it, who do I decide to speak to out of the 50,000 people we deal with? So what I usually do is just remind the team we're here, comment, get them involved in conversations outside of work or points of view that they have. And that's been really good. So LinkedIn's come into its own a lot for us. And then the final thing is our videos were very much about nothing to do with work. They were like, hey, this is my office setup. This is what it looks like. This is why I've got a picture of this car, and this is why I've got this, and here's my garden, and show me yours. What's your office setup like? And that was really cool. A lot of people got really into and then we had a pet day where we were like, okay, show me your pet. And it was just a little bit of a distraction, on the Slack channel to say pictures of pets coming in and those kind of things. And that's what we found really good about this, being in this community kind of spirit at the moment has worked pretty well for us.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that stuff is essential, right? And, at the end of the day, like we all want to win, we all want to be successful, but we also want to have fun. We also want to feel connected. We also want to feel like, I think to your point around the younger generation being a lot of the increasingly buying committee of software. I mean, the younger people they just interact in a different way. Like they like the to your point, gamification. We all grew up with video games, like we all love that stuff. It's how we've been conditioned. And so bringing it into the workplace makes a ton of sense. And the interesting other thing I want to talk about is micro motivation, right? And so I think a lot of us, you get excited about, hey, we closed the deal, let's ring the bell. That's not anything new, yet it took a village to get there often. There's a lot of little things that need to go right to make that happen. So when you say micro motivation and recognition of that, like what types of things are you doing?
Yeah, so I'll talk about what we're doing, and I won't name the companies at the minute because actually we're still in final kind of decision making. But there's 3 or 4 leaders in that market, and I think one of them is doing an exceptional job using some NLP AI to see, the intent of internal conversations to make sure that people are motivated. And the other great thing as a sales leader, you can use those as an activity tracker, so you can actually see pretty up to speed in real time what your teams and your people are up to. And again, not to spy on them, but just to make sure they're being proactive, make sure that, they're not wasting time on things which are not going to generate revenue for them and help them to become better at what they do. But what I will say is, and just an adjunct to that, which we need to come back to, is if you ever follow me on any of my posts, which are always along the same theme, it's like I've got a pet hate about everyone being an expert in sales at the minute and having an AI tool to solve a problem. And I kind of struggle when somebody runs a business and they're like 23 years old and tells me they think they know everything about sales. I've been in it for 25 years and I only know 10% of how sales works. It's an incredibly difficult subject to understand from the psychological perspective, the process piece, because humans are not predictable. And it's a human-to-human interface still. Until buying is automated, you can't automate sales. You just can't. You can augment sales with automation, but you cannot automate it. So we might come back to that because there's a bit of a strong opinion I have around that. But the micro motivation for me was about basically, I've had a saying which was taught to me by my mentor, years and years ago, is that you can only manage the activity, not the result. And if you look at any great, and I hate to use the sports analogy because it's not that inclusive, but it is a good thing to look at. Any sports person that's worth their weight in gold will talk about the process and what they're going to do. They don't talk about the result. They don't talk about winning a medal or a race or a division. The great line was when the English cyclist Bradley Wiggins won the Tour de France. It was the last 3 stages, and he had to do something big to win it. And they asked the 3 leaders of what they were going to do. And the other 2 leaders of the race came up with these really weird and complex strategies of everything they're going to do. And Bradley Wiggins turned around and said, I've got to cycle for 3 days, 8 hours a day, and produce 410 watts average. If I do that, I'll win. And it was like, and it was like so clear in his mind. You knew he was going to win. Where the others were like, they were talking about bike strategy, setup, changing the handlebars, their clothing. I'm like, really? And that's what sales is all about. It's about the activity. So, the question is, we should then motivate and reward at the correct activity. And that is something you can look at every day and feel you've achieved something without just the result. And again, I don't think I've ever fired anyone in my life for missing a number. I'll fire them for missing a number and not doing the right activity to get that number. But you've got to give people a chance that the result will come if the activity is correct. So rewarding that is being critical, and we're moving very heavy down that path.
There's an amazing book I like, not to double down on your sports analogy here, but it's called The Score Takes Care of Itself.
Yeah.
And it's about Bill Walsh and the 49ers and how he led them to, multiple championships rapidly. And it was exactly what you described, where it's, if we do all the right things along the way, we will be where we want to end up at the end of the season.
I have based whole seminars on that book. It is an amazing book. Everyone in business, everyone in sales should read that book to understand. Again, I have this pet hate, you get the cocky sales guy that comes up, he's probably 2 years out of grad school. He's got an MBA, he's smart, and he's going to go far. And, they come up and tell me what they're going to do. They're going to smash it and they're going to get 300% and they're going to earn this and they're going to do that. And without telling me any of the activity they're going to do to get that, I have zero time for those kind of people. I'm more about people that talk to me about, well, what I'm going to do is going to work really hard. I'm going to learn my market. I'm going to vertically specialize. I'm going to do this. And I'm like, great, you'll be successful. So that's how sales has changed, by the way, a lot. Those people that think are going to do a lot better than those ones that just...
The charismatic steak dinner salesperson is no longer the model for success.
Yeah, it's difficult for me because I'm a British guy, in Silicon Valley. And so that's not unusual. But, most of my peers are, true bred Americans, look halfway between a tennis coach and a movie star. And they lead sales companies. And that's certainly not me. So yeah, I'm more about content than style for sure. So.
I got to say though, when I get a cold call with someone from a British accent, I'm like, oh, I want to listen. It does
work, it does work. It's getting a little tired now though, but it's the same in the UK. If you've got an American accent, you do pretty well selling over here. So yeah, we could.
Nice. So let's talk about the profile of the modern seller and how that's evolving, because it seems like you have a strong opinion on this, and we like strong opinions on this show.
There's some key elements you need to be successful in sales. The first one is resilience, and that has to flow through everything. But resilience doesn't need to be what I call worn on your sleeve. There are some very resilient people in the world who might be shy, be introvert, and you don't know what's happened in their backgrounds. You should never judge people because they can give you some story and present a story of being resilient. You can only see resilience once they're in your business and how they take it. In sales, even if you got the best close rate in the world, you're going to lose more than you win over a 20-year. You are. It's just the way that it is. So therefore, you got to be resilient and get used to losing and understand what it takes to win. And so the people that can figure that journey out and then understand the activities that they need to take in order to be successful and successful consistently are going to make it. So I'm looking more at a profile now which has the intelligence to sort through data. You need to be incredibly dexterous with data and pick the points out of what's important and what you need to know. And then you need to have that self-discipline and self-awareness to know when you're off track and to bring yourself back and to do the correct activities. I will take that all day long over, what I would call the classic presentation skills, the other bits and pieces. And actually diversity is helping us here. Diversity and inclusion, is clearly a very important movement for the whole world, but also in sales, because you can bring people that have very different experiences, very different backgrounds that might not be the most gregarious, comfortable presenters, sharp suit, drive a Porsche. We talked about that earlier before we came on, those kind of things. And why not? It might be somebody that had an upbringing and was a refugee that came into one of the Western country and found huge success through that. Might not have spoken English as their first language, but now sells in America or the UK or wherever and does very well. It could be somebody that has gone through having their children, and maybe their children are settled now and they want to go back to work and they want to go and drive for something and achieve. And trust me, bringing up kids is tough. So I think that looking at those kind of attributes and skills opens my talent pool up to a whole different approach, and we're really excited about what that brings.
So, Marcus, I totally agree with you. And we talk a lot on this show about how the sales profession is evolving. A lot of the same overlap in things. And so, when you talk about data dexterity and the ability to really find out what matters and track that and understand it in order to, change course and truly be more effective, A, what are those metrics or, things that you really care about in a deal? And B, like these new people that you're hiring with this skill set, how are you coaching them and how is that different from the way you were coaching your reps before?
So the first thing is that you need to look at somebody's actual overall intelligence. And intelligence can be measured in very different ways. There's verbal reasoning, numerical reasoning. There's actually pictorial reasoning, those that can solve those complicated kind of picture reasons. Those that can spot patterns in data, so we actually put people through a relatively tough test, those kind of tests, which are hard to pass, very hard to pass. And they're meant to be difficult on purpose. And you're given the time because you put them under pressure. Most of these tests, there's too many questions for you to answer unless you are generally IQ of 200. So that's another panic. What people panic at that point and come out going, freeze because they couldn't get through the questions. And what it shows you is it's frightening how many people you would think are good salespeople or even good senior leaders that would fail those tests. They would just blank fail them. And I've actually interviewed VP levels who refuse to take them because they know they will fail. And so for me, it's like we're done. Just forget it. If you're not humble enough to take a test to prove that you've got these skills, so you can weed out a lot on that basis. Flipping to the coaching now needs to be a lot more about helping people use tools and telling stories. So I believe that sales these days is more about sense making. When I started as a rep, I'm kind of 48 now. So when I started as a rep, the internet was kind of around, but people had a website and that was it. You couldn't really do anything with it. We had cell phones. I'm not that old. I did have a cell phone on my first job, but the customer would see you to get information. They didn't know what you had or how to solve a problem. And you would go in and ask a ton of open questions. Yeah, it'll all be, tell me about your business, tell me about the future, all that kind of stuff. I grew up with the Xerox probing triangle, the best sales training in the world still, and I stand by it. Most sales training, including medic, comes from what was called SL1 from Xerox. So, by the way, medic's nothing new. For all those medic fans out there, it's been around for years. It's just a new nomenclature for something that's been around for like 35 years. So, not knocking medic, but people, get very religious about medic as if it changes the world. It really doesn't.
There.
Yeah. And we use it, by the way. I love it. I think it's a great nomenclature, but that's all it is, a nomenclature for doing the right things. Now that you have that kind of skill base in the business, it's about helping them tell stories and sense make, because you no longer, as I said, go in and ask questions. You're going in now and you've got to lead with a proposition. The only email I'll respond to from a cold call or an email will be somebody who's got some information or leading me to something. Say, hey, Marcus, I've been looking at your vertical and we've helped another company with this problem and this is how we did it. And we learned from this process. Would you like to talk? Cool. That's a pretty good approach. If you've hit on something which I'm actually interested in, no one's asking me an open question there. No one's saying, I'd like to come and talk to you about my solutions. You're being very specific. And that's how selling has really changed at the front end. And the skill to be able to come up with those insights is the correct word from the Challenger Gartner book, is incredibly important. So you need that intellect to be able to create that insight to lead to the next meeting.
Hey, Andrei from Troops here. Are you using Slack or Microsoft Teams at your organization? If you are, then you have to be delivering the right information to the right people at the right time, from your CRM, marketing automation, support, sales engagement, and customer success systems in an actionable way with Troops.ai. But don't just take my word for it. Listen to what our customers are saying about their experience using Troops.
It's a huge coaching tool because most of the time the deals push or stages go in the wrong direction. We can kind of do a postmortem and see where our process wasn't followed adequately. But most of the time, it's a coaching opportunity for the individual and in turn the team. So it was brought on more of a visibility tool, but it's really started to influence the way in which we identify coaching opportunities.
You know, we had a CEO of a company called Science on the show not too long ago. And one of the things he said is if you go through our buying process, you will learn a ton. Like, I can guarantee you that. You might not decide to work with us, but I guarantee you will walk away and you will have a better understanding of how to build an outbound sales engine in your market and whether that even makes sense for you.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of a North Star for me, at least in terms of customer experience, where, you know, like you said, if you're batting 250 in sales, that's pretty damn good. And you're still losing 75% of the times. But regardless, if you're able to construct an experience where people are just thankful and grateful that they learned from you, because you're bringing those insights, because you're bringing those ideas, you're bringing market parallels. I think, you know, that is ultimately how you should be designing your process.
I totally agree. And again, you might not win that deal, but you know, you will win that customer over. And in my game, in any game, you never really lose a customer. You lose a deal. You lose that point of sale. You lose that transaction at that time. But there's always a chance to go back. Things run out. Things change. And so you should make sure that your engagement is professional and they took something away from it that they respected and learned. And if they did, as a salesperson, you've actually done your job, to be fair. I mean, don't tell too many people that on this call, but you've probably done your job. Whether you win or not is up to the sentiment, the pricing, the product design, everything. So, you know, there's a number of factors of why you can win and lose, and that's very important. But going back, even that is a classic old school sale. That used to be called the puppy dog sale in Xerox, where you go and say, well, I don't know if I can help you, but hey, go through the process because I might be able to save you a load of money, or I might be able to do this, or I might be able to do that. So there's nothing new in sales. It's just the approach that you take and the structure that you take to take it forward.
Well, I would even take that further. I just think in generally, there's not a lot of new ideas. I mean, all these people that are writing books, it's a lot of just the same ideas recycled. To your point around storytelling, I do think though, it's the framing ideas in a relatable way that allows you to understand and utilize it that is really where the value is.
I agree. I think Gartner have done, shout out to Gartner here. And again, I think BCG did great work around this area as well. But Gartner particularly, I think, have done very well in naming what's going on. What they do is they observe a behavior and they put a structure around it and name it. So you go, that is what's happening. And now I can express it. And so I thought what they call the sense-making journey is a very interesting way of what I knew was going on but couldn't articulate it. So it's very helpful the work they've done around that.
Yeah, it is kind of a funny idea. I mean, it's like certain communities in the like Eskimo community have 20 different words for snow. we literally don't have the language to express certain things, which inhibits our ability to describe them. And so it is kind of just an interesting point where just the mere act of naming something can be very, very helpful and valuable for understanding and implementation. I want to go back to the role of AI in sales. So it sounds like you have invested in certain solutions for your team to help them become more efficient and effective during COVID, which is great. Some of which might leverage AI. It also sounds like, you mentioned this is still a human to human interface. So what is the role today? What do you see the role in the future?
So I look at it, obviously we're a big AI company. One of our leading, our lead into the market, we lead a couple of Gartner MQs for our AI products around our switching technology and wireless technology in particular. So we have a lot of data scientists in the business, like a lot, some of the best in the world actually, in a couple of fellows working for us. And we have the discussion a lot. And so what AI can do in human-to-human interactions, AI can do two things. And when we talk about AI, we're talking about artificial intelligence. And I'm going to come on to another subject which is augmented intelligence, which is slightly different. So artificial intelligence can replace some of the drudgery of what needs to be done. So what humans are bad at is, I always use this example. We bought the most boring thing in the world. We have to buy a new washing machine, yeah? And, apparently that's a thing that, you have to look into because obviously, it gets used a lot. And we bought this one and it was massively expensive for what it does. I can't remember how much it was, but it was like 3 times the price of the others. But the customer experience was like second to none. And it was literally, I must have had an email every day from them about, hey, have you tried this program? Have you done this? I've hooked you into this, eco provider that I think is really good. Is everything okay? And I'm going, wow, that's amazing customer service. And they realize none of this is coming from a human. But, none of it is. But I still feel engaged and I still feel, so that kind of the part of being that customer engagement piece where you've done the sale and then it goes cold. I think AI tools, and we're using a lot there to make sure that people are engaged with and you're giving them insight and help to use the product correctly. I think AI has a big part to play there. So make sure the use of what you sold is meeting their expectations because that drives loyalty. So I think the CX part is incredibly important. The other part where I actually think AI can work a lot is it can give you a vector. It can't give you an absolute. And anyone in data science will tell you this. As soon as humans are engaged, you can't give you an absolute variant. It's like, and the classic model of look on an AI tool, a traffic light can look the same as a bunny rabbit if it's done the right way. Yeah, it's not that intelligent where it has contextual information to make that decision, but it can give you a vector and saying, I've looked at something, and this is one of 3 things. It's either a traffic light, a bunny rabbit, or something else. And so what it can do is give you that vector. So what I like is the NLPs. So I really like the NLP tools, the natural language processing. We can say, this customer is saying good things about you. Generally, I'd give this a green. He's saying nice things about you using your words. That's a good sign. Does it mean he's going to buy from you? No. Does it mean that your next action should be X? Maybe. So I like it as a suggestive vector for the next steps. And we use all sorts of products. We're considering Aviso. We use Clary. We use Einstein. We use those kind of things. I like the AI tools for forecasting. They give me another vector for forecasting. And the forecast accuracy of our AI tool now on Einstein is very good. And so it's as accurate as my field roll-up, pretty much within 2-3%. So I really think that's come a long way. But that's just manipulating data and numbers. And so that's what AI tools are really good at. What they're not good at is taking away that face-to-face process, is making a judgment on what needs to be done next. They can suggest, as I say, a vector, but they cannot be absolute. And that's why the human still has to come into it. That's my take on AI at the moment.
I agree. There's certainly value in things that can ingest your email communication and ingest, your meetings on your calendar and all these different things to try to create signal. But at the end of the day, there is certain context, right? Which are things like, hey, was this person excited when I was talking to them? Did they work at a previous customer? Did we bond over something? Do we share a shared belief in the way that, businesses should operate? That we're just not there. And I don't know that we're going to get there anytime soon, frankly.
Well, unless you automate the buying process, you can't automate the sales process. I've said that many times before, because the other thing that models are all linear. Sales models are linear. Yeah, you start at open, prove, close, whatever methodology you have. Yeah, buying behavior isn't linear. It's anything but linear. It goes all over the place. It can go from budget to no budget to I want this, I don't want this. I've killed the project, I've opened a new project. It's non-linear. So, and equally, it's consensus driven. So you can't apply an AI tool to consensus. The filters would be, you get petabytes of data and still be wrong. So augmented intelligence is way better than artificial intelligence. Using tools which can help you shortcut to intent, I believe is the way forward.
Yeah. So anybody who's deciding to change their companies to augmented instead of artificial,
I'm all over it. I'm a sucker. I'm easy to sell to. I'm all over that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, why don't we transition to our lightning round here, Marcus, where audience has a chance to learn a little bit more about you on the personal side.
Okay.
All right, Marcus, I think I know the answer to this question, but the audience can't see your camera. So why don't you tell us about a secret passion of yours?
So I'm a big car guy. So, I know I'm antiquated. I'm like burning fossil fuel, but, I always look at burning fossil fuel as the ultimate in recycling because I'm using up dead dinosaurs. So I look at it that way. So, but, I try and balance it by being very balanced in my other parts of my life and take ecology pretty seriously because I grew up by the sea and we take it pretty seriously. But no, I'm a car guy. I like collecting certain cars, kind of what I call modern classics. So I'm interested in stuff from late 90s through to about 2005, 2006. That's kind of my era. And I do a fair bit of racing. Lucky enough to be able to do that around the world in a few GT championships. So yeah, that's kind of my downtime. That
sounds epic.
Yeah, that's really cool.
How fast do you go when you're racing? I'm just
see. Everyone asks that. It's not about how fast you go in a straight line. I mean, probably the fastest you would go where I race would probably be something like Zandvoort in the Netherlands. Maybe Circuit of America is a pretty quick track. You probably hit 170 in the stuff that I race, but it's the cornering speed. So, I race GT cars which have what's called flat floors without getting too dynamic. So it's got a little bit of downforce. So you can probably pull probably about 2.2, 2.3 G in a corner. And, I know F1 cars can pull 5. So, but, pulling 2.2 G in a car, which looks like a road car is an experience that you will never forget once you've done it once. Yeah. So it's not the acceleration of these cars, it's the braking and the cornering, which always makes people come out feeling very ill. So, yeah.
What do you not understand right now that you'd really like to better understand in the coming 6 months?
What I'd really like to understand, and again, this is how on earth the market values any software company, how it does at the moment. I'd really like to understand how market capitalizations of companies are more than the entire total addressable market they could possibly sell to in the next 10 years. That's what I'd like somebody to try and explain to me. I do not understand how those valuations can be so high. And I'm not talking about cloud companies. I get it. I get what the cloud has. I'm talking about platform as a service or software as a service. It's not reinventing the wheel. Software has to run on hardware. Software can be copied and zeroed. That's just one of the examples in the market that I just do not understand.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And Marcus, so what is a leader in sales that you really, really admire and why?
Wow, a leader in sales that I admire. I'm actually going to give a lot of credit to a couple of people, I think, and it will sound strange, but a direct competitor in the biggest in our market, which is Jerry Elliott and Chuck Robbins at Cisco. I think both of them are very good human beings, and that is what comes across as being good people as well as good leaders. So I really respect them for being able to run companies of that scale. My job's difficult at 5 billion. I can't imagine what their days must look like on their scale. And to be able to keep that human side and to actually stand up and be counted, I think, credit to both of those characters. I think they show a great strength of character.
The last one here, Marcus, is what was the biggest inflection point in your career?
The biggest inflection point in my career was working in very early days when I was taking the move from a rep to a manager. And somebody taking the time to coach me and mentor me. And a guy, I'll name him, a guy called Richard Clark in the UK, actually stopped me turning into the world's biggest idiot because I was the worst kind of salesperson. I was aggressive. I thought I knew it all. I wouldn't listen to anyone. I thought I was the bee's knees. And he kind of took me aside and said, you're just going to head for burnout. You are going to blow yourself to pieces if you carry on like this. This is not the way to behave. And he took time to show me a different path. And I've always appreciated him for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love hearing that. I mean, mentorship is just such an incredible part of life and so valuable. And, I'm sure you're paying it forward in spades to a lot of the people that you work with. So
Yeah, and the other thing is you learn as you get older, you learn to be a bit nicer. I can honestly say as a younger guy, I wasn't that nice. I mean, I wasn't horrible, but I wasn't a particularly nice guy. But, I'm not saying I'm the nicest guy in the world now, but actually, if you can be kind, be kind. There's no need to be anything else, even though you've got a difficult job. And trust me, a lot of my guys might say I'm not kind to them all the time, but I try to be.
Jeff Bezos gave my graduation speech at my college, and his keynote message was, he told this amazing story, which I will save for another time. But the punchline was, it's better to be kind than to be clever, which has stuck with me to this day. Now, whether he lives up to that, TBD, but I think that's a whole other thing. But I do think, you are right. As you get more mature and you get less self-centered, it is something that I think is a lesson that all of us can learn from. So,
and one thing I didn't say that we spend a lot of time on Strength Finder, which is about people learning their own values. So every single person in my organization goes through Strength Finder to understand what they're good at and what they're bad at. Not bad. You don't have weaknesses. You have strengths and areas to work on, we say. And we make sure that people use their top 5 strengths all the time, because you can't actually change human nature. So your top 5 strengths change very little over your life. What does change is your values. And if you can understand yourself and what drives you and motivates you, then you'll be incredibly successful whatever you do. If you don't understand what drives you, you can actually be pretty miserable. So that's an important thing for us as well. Make people self-aware, I think that's up to leadership to help make people self-aware.
This might be a little bit, off the wall here, but based on what you just said, I'm curious. Have you ever had a situation where an employee took the Strengths Finder, maybe their top 5 strengths didn't align perfectly with the position they were currently in, and then you guys kind of encouraged them to go into another direction to find a better fit for them?
Yeah, we don't. Maybe. I mean, I'm going to say this, and again, this isn't me being kind of Europe versus America. American leaders find it very hard to accept their strengths. So because they want them to be in a certain category, they want to see leadership, competitiveness, And when they come out with things like woo and empathy, they see that as a sign of weakness. And you go, no, it's not a sign. It's just who you are. It's your makeup. So what we ask people to do is relish in your strengths and use them, because they've got you where you are. So I've never seen anyone that is so obtuse that their strengths are so incorrect that I go, oh my God, I've got to change their role. But maybe that'll happen one day. But I haven't had to do that yet. Hopefully I don't have to do that.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love that you guys invest in that. Well, Marcus, man, we're so grateful for you coming on the show. This was a ton of fun, a lot to think about for everybody in the go-to-market profession and just leaders of people. And we just want to say thank you, man. We want to say thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom. It's really, really good stuff.
That was a lot of fun, guys. I wouldn't call it wisdom. It's just my blabbing about what I've seen over the last 25 years, but it's always a pleasure. And thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you like this content, please subscribe, leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, all the things. And we will see you next time on Business is Human.